Hey everyone, I'm Ian Douglas, the author of the website techinterview.guide. I do live streams every Sunday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern about topics relevant to interview preparation for the tech industry. I occasionally record longer Q&A sessions, and I've started to break those into smaller videos to post. And there'll be information at the end of this video about how to get in contact with me if you have additional questions. Let's get to it. As an experienced software developer, how much time do you take to prepare for a technical interview before applying for an open position? This is a good question. So I recently did a job change myself this summer. I was teaching at the Turing School of Software and Design. I taught there for close to 4 years, not quite 4 years. Actually, yesterday would have been my 4-year anniversary if I'd stayed, but I left mid-June. And I had known for about a month or so, almost 2 months prior to that I was going to leave. Well, a month for sure. I've been kind of toying with the idea for a month prior to that, like as far back as like mid to late April. And so when it came to preparation time, like how do I want to prepare for interviews? You know, some of it's taking my own advice around some of the topics that I address here on the stream and that I produce then into the podcast and the YouTube videos and so on about how to study those kinds of algorithms and data structures and things like that. But for a senior level developer, you know, for the amount of experience I have, because I've been in the industry for 25 years, the kinds of questions that you get asked are a little bit different. But it also depends on the kind of role that I would apply to. If I was applying for more of an architect, you know, staff engineer, principal engineer kind of role, like that really super senior kind of level, they're going to ask questions about how do I implement like whole systems, you know, and work with my team to make sure that I'm helping my whole team level up in their skill and their experience and so on. As just kind of the what I would consider kind of entry level, senior level, like you're just getting into that senior level role where you got like 5, 6, 7 years experience. Depending on companies will hire you as a senior developer with like 3 or 4 years experience. It really depends on sort of how you've been spending that time. When you're fairly new at calling yourself a senior developer, they're really going to be focusing a lot of questions around like efficiencies and optimizations, maybe a little bit around mentorship. But it's probably going to be about like how do you take code that somebody with less experience than you has written and how do you make that better? When you start getting into, like I said, kind of the even more senior level type roles like lead developers and staff developers and principals and so on and architects, then it becomes about like how do you build whole systems? And there's probably going to be more components of system design and a lot of the more like data pipelining types of questions, like how do you get data from this system over to this system in an efficient manner? And how can that scale and deal with fault tolerance and redundancies and all that kind of stuff? And, you know, you start getting into parallelism and you know, that sort of stuff. And so the kinds of questions that I would have been asked. So I actually, when I decided I was going to stop working at Turing, I actually put a profile up on Hired.com just as kind of an initial like, oh, I wonder, you know, if I put my profile on there and I ask for like ridiculous level salary, whether anybody would even take a bite. And I actually had 3 companies reach out that same day going, yeah, we want to interview you. And I'm like, you know how much money I was asking for, right? Like you saw that part. Not that I believe I deserved that amount of money, but I'm just like, let's see what's out there. Let's see whether anybody would even contact me with my experience for that amount of money. And 3 companies did. And I did an initial phone screen with one of them, and the initial phone screen went really well. And then they described what their interview process was going to be. It was going to be like multiple days doing multiple interviews with multiple people. And I'm like, oh, that sounds awful. Like, why not speed that process up a little bit? You know, but from a company's perspective, if they're hiring somebody for a lot of salary, they want to make sure they're really hiring the right person. So it makes sense. So when, you know, the more experience that you get, the kinds of questions that you're going to get asked and expect to answer are going to vary a lot. Ultimately, though, it really comes down to the same kinds of things I always talk about. What do you know? What don't you know? Is that stuff going to fit in on my team? Are you going to fit in on the team? Are people going to like to work with you? Do you come across as somebody who's very personable? Like you could teach me something as an interviewer. Anytime I ever interviewed somebody with more experience than me, I would always kind of pry into, why are you doing it that way? Like, can you explain to me why you're doing it that way? Because when I bring senior level people on my team, I want to make sure that they're going to work with the juniors and the intermediates on my team to help level them up. And so I want them to help the rest of my team get better. And so during that interview, I'm going to ask some questions that are going to kind of get them into sort of a teaching mode. Like, oh, teach me something about such and such. And listen and really kind of engage in their answers a little bit to see how well they could teach a concept or explain why something happens the way that it does. Because that's the kind of person that I would want to hire in that role. Every company is going to be a little bit different though. But as you gain more and more experience, it's going to pivot a lot less away from the actual code, because in the really senior positions, you're not actually writing very much code anymore. You're spending more time like designing out whole systems and sort of directing how these multiple systems are going to get built and interact with each other and kind of intercommunicate with each other, and less time actually sitting down writing code yourself. You're going to be kind of delegating that responsibility out to other lead engineers who are then going to lead their team to go build that component for you. And that's kind of the hierarchy that you get into. Again, depending on the size of the company. If the company is quite small and they bring you on as like, staff engineer, in a small company, that really doesn't mean anything. I often chuckle in small startups, less than say 40, 50 people, the quote unquote CTO is really just the lead developer of the whole company. They're the person with the most experience and the most knowledge of how all the things plug in together. And so they just kind of get, tagged with this title of CTO. Hey, thanks for watching. I love helping people out with interview prep, and I hope this video helped you in some way. If you found this Q&A useful, please consider subscribing. You can follow me on Twitch as well for the live stream twice a week. Check out techinterview.guide/streaming for more information. I also have a daily email series that you can subscribe to on the website. There are never any ads, and when you finish the series, I scrub your information out of my database permanently. Finally, if you have a question that you'd like answered on the stream, you can find my contact info on techinterview.guide. I prefer LinkedIn or email. If you leave your question in a YouTube comment, it might take me longer to find it, but I'll see you next time.